Psychological Inner Work: How to Heal and Transform Yourself by Aion, Farvahar. Your real life starts when you become your authentic self. But for that to happen, you must first heal and transform your emotional wounds and self-limiting beliefs. Psychological inner work is a process that helps you do that. It calls you to become a wounded healer and take ownership of your own healing. Hi, this is Aion Farvahar. I'm glad you're here. This channel is about self-realization and honoring our life purpose and meaning. If you're interested in these topics, please subscribe to stay connected. Your support is the foundation of this channel and encourages me to create more content in the future. For more information about myself and my life mentoring practice, please find my bio link in the description below. Also, for more information about the artist behind the expressive images I use here, please see the description below. Today, we want to focus on psychological inner work. Psychological inner work is about understanding the inner workings of your mind and the originating source of your emotions and beliefs, especially those that drain your life energy. This understanding does not come from reading books, but from becoming compassionately curious about the emotions or beliefs that dominate your mind. Understanding the root of your emotions and beliefs is essential because you cannot heal or transform what you don't fully understand. Psychological inner work is about healing, transformation, and restoration of inner peace and harmony in your mind. Without inner peace and harmony, everything in your life becomes an emotional reaction to how others or the world affects you. As adults, we all carry psychological burdens, many of which are caused by having a negative self-image. For example, related to our look, our intelligence, our sense of worth, our personal power, and so on. Because we have always felt that way, our mind has accepted our painful emotions and self-limiting beliefs as permanent aspects of our personality and who we are. We need to do something about this because our painful emotions and self-limiting beliefs are the destroyers of our life and overshadow our genuinely positive and authentic nature. Remember that you did not come to this world to shy away from life. You came here with innate authenticity and human qualities, authenticity and qualities that need to be expressed. So liberating yourself from emotions or beliefs that prevent you from fully embodying your authenticity and human qualities should be your primary goal in life. This presentation invites you to realize that your personality is a fluid perception, and what your mind has accepted as who you are is simply a perspective, often dominated by life experiences that affected you the most. You can transform your personality in positive ways, but to do that, you need to do some psychological inner work to heal and transform your self-limiting emotions and beliefs. The psychological inner work, as presented here, is a deep and technical process requiring your full attention. So if you can, listen to the content shared here more than once, make notes, and consider contemplating on them on your own. Working on yourself at an emotional level is a deep work and may require some help from a therapist or healing practitioner, at least in the beginning. However, if you consider yourself a wounded healer and feel centered and comfortable to take ownership of your healing and transformational process, you may find the content I shared here insightful. You become a wounded healer when you realize that your open heart is the most powerful healer you can ever have, and the only job you have is to create space for it to open up and bring healing to the wounded parts of your personality. Your emotional wounds and self-limiting beliefs prevent you from having a positive state of mind or to feel empowered to pursue and manifest the life you really want. Remember that feeling alive, inspired, and playful in life is your birthright. So if you don't feel that way, you need to work to change that. This presentation explains what psychological inner work is and why it is essential to our self-awareness and emotional well-being. It also explains the basic skills one needs in order to be able to do some psychological inner work. More specifically, we cover the following topics. What is psychological inner work and why it is essential? What is the ultimate goal of psychological inner work? An ideal state of mind. What burdens the mind? Understanding different types of psychological burdens. And what skills are needed to do psychological inner work? The archetype of healing. The last topic is probably most important, especially if you are a wounded healer and feel comfortable doing your own healing work. It explains a set of skills you need to develop to be able to do some psychological inner work. Please note that I am a certified IFS practitioner, not a psychologist, and techniques provided here are based on my personal knowledge and experience. They are not meant to reflect an academic view on psychology. If you're interested in academic perspectives, please consider reading classic books on psychology and psychotherapy. What is psychological inner work and why it is essential? Psychological inner work is about understanding the underlying reason behind your emotions, beliefs, and decisions in life. It is the only way you can deepen your self-awareness. Without it, your awareness of yourself remains superficial and limited to what you have accepted as your personal characteristics. True self-awareness is not about being able to describe yourself, knowing what you like or dislike, or what you want or don't want. It's about knowing who you really are inside, why you like or dislike something, and why you want or otherwise don't want something. Let me use a metaphor to clarify why this is important. If I notice some pain in an organ in my body, my mind naturally becomes preoccupied and curious about that pain. I may even go to see a physician to find out why that organ of my body has pain. Similarly, if I notice an emotion or belief in me that is painful or self-critical, preoccupying my mind, it should be natural for me to also be curious about it and why it is there in my mind. The takeaway here is that your mind is an extension of your body, and you need to understand what burdens it and why, and work to heal and transform its burdens. If you don't heal and transform what burdens your mind, you have no choice but to cope with them and accept them as a part of who you are. If you don't heal or transform your burdens, your life remains subject to them without you having much control. Psychological inner work is essential because it helps you become compassionately curious about yourself. For example, if I'm someone who gets frustrated easily in certain occasions or when dealing with certain people, I have two choices. One choice is to try to avoid such occasions or such people, so I won't have to get frustrated. This is not always possible, especially in a work environment where I don't have much discretion about whom to interact with. The other choice is to become compassionately curious about why such occasions or such people make a part of me feel frustrated. What about these occasions or people is frustrating? When was the first time I experienced such occasions or such people? What happened to me back then that led to my younger self feeling frustrated? Such insights helps me heal and transform the wounded part of me, so it no longer needs to get frustrated, regardless of what or who I deal with. Unfortunately, focusing on yourself and doing your inner work is not as easy as it may seem, and requires genuine commitment and dedication. This is because the external world is designed to perfection, to capture your attention and curiosity and distract you from what is happening inside your own self. If you're someone who seeks deeper and more authentic experiences in life, doing your psychological inner work is essential, because if you don't become curious about your strongest emotions and beliefs, they dominate your mind and ultimately run your life. When you commit to do your psychological inner work, you commit to become your most authentic self and live your most authentic life. Up to that point, your life is simply a collection of random experiences in reaction to how you perceive yourself and the world. What is the ultimate goal of psychological inner work? An ideal state of mind. The ultimate goal of psychological inner work is to reach an ideal state of mind. But what is an ideal state of mind? Is it even attainable? At any moment in time, there are two versions of you. One is your current self, embodying a set of emotions and beliefs, some of which may not be as positive or as life-affirming. The other version of you is a potentiality of how you could be, a version of you who feels peaceful, courageous, confident, and empowered, a version of you that operates in an ideal state of mind. Let me explain what I mean here by operating in an ideal state of mind. You operate in an ideal state of mind when you have a sense of self-worth and know your value as an individual, without the need for external validation, worldly possessions, achievements, or associations. This means your sense of value does not depend on how you look, what you achieve, or whether or not you're loved or admired by others. It is you recognizing and embracing all aspects of your being unconditionally and without judgment. You trust yourself unconditionally, irrespective of all your setbacks, rejections, mistakes, or failures in the past. You view yourself not as a perfect being, but as an authentic individual. Because of that, your highest motivation in everything you do is not striving for perfection, but remaining authentic and staying true to yourself and your core values. You radically accept and embrace your weaknesses with an open heart, and because of that, you don't judge or criticize yourself, and are no longer affected by external judgment or criticism. You have transformed and don't carry heavy emotional burdens from the past, such as sorrow, shame, guilt, regret, and so on. And because of that, you have an innate sense of vitality and life energy to manifest your best life. You notice your authenticity and uniqueness, but you don't see yourself higher than others, because you know that deep inside, others also have an authentic and unique nature. You have inner peace and harmony, even in periods when life presents you with challenges and difficulties. Because your mind operates in peace and harmony, you feel centered and have clarity about how to rise above all your challenges, irrespective of what they are. This state of mind may seem too idealistic and unattainable, but from personal experience, it is in fact attainable and practical to a great degree. You have the capacity to reach an ideal state of mind, but it all comes down to how committed you are to do your own inner work and to heal and transform what needs healing and transformation in you. So it remains up to you how close to this ideal state of mind you ultimately get. Most authentic and individuated people often operate in this ideal state of mind. If you commit to be a wounded healer and take ownership of your healing journey, it's just a matter of time to get there. What burdens the mind? Understanding different types of psychological burdens. The ideal state of mind is about feeling inner peace and harmony and having an unconditional sense of self-worth, self-trust, and self-love. Any emotion or belief that blocks you from all these and impairs your ability to feel centered is considered a psychological burden. For example, your anxiousness and conflicting thoughts block your ability to have peace and clarity. Your negative self-image, for example, related to your look, intelligence, willpower, and so on, blocks your ability to notice your positive qualities and authenticity. And painful memories of your failures and rejections in the past prevent you from trusting yourself to create the life you really want. That said, noticing, healing, and transforming your psychological burdens should be your most immediate goal in life. Metaphorically speaking, your psychological burdens are like heavy emotional rocks you unknowingly carry in your backpack on the road of life. You picked up these rocks through your painful experiences in the past, and you still unwantedly carry them. The more difficult your past had been, the more emotional rocks you currently carry, and the less positive, inspired, and alive you feel in life. You need to find these rocks one by one and realize when and how they ended up in your backpack. Then you can decide if they still have merits for you to hold on to them. Psychological burdens can be classified in different ways. I use two of such classifications here. One way to classify psychological burdens is by their originating source. It is empirically observed that not all of our psychological burdens are related to our current life. There are some that are legacy burdens and transferred to us through our parents or ancestors. There are also burdens that are collective, like cultural or archetypal burdens. So one way to classify psychological burdens can be based on their originating source. In such classification, we have personal or biographical burdens, legacy or ancestral burdens, and collective or archetypal burdens. Personal or biographical burdens are caused by an emotionally adverse experience in life. These burdens are experienced at the personal level and are often the main focus in psychological inner work. I provide further classification of them later. Legacy or ancestral burdens are burdens we inherited from a parent, a grandparent, or an ancestor. We can identify a legacy burden when the negative emotion or belief we experience is also present in others in our family, often in our parents or guardians. For example, if my great-grandparent lived through scarcity or famine, I may feel an unusual level of existential fear of dying from hunger, no matter how financially secure I become. It is empirically observed that the burdens of our ancestors may re-emerge in us psychospiritually with the hope to be healed and transformed through us. Collective or archetypal burdens are burdens that have an archetypal source. For example, one may suffer from an unexplainable or extreme sense of hatred toward animals without any obvious reason. If such hatred is not related to a personal or legacy trauma related to animals, the person may simply experience an archetypal hatred which happen to be directed toward animals. Many of evil deeds perpetrated in the world are often caused by collective or archetypal burdens. The most important point here is the fact that not every psychological burden we experience is necessarily ours. This is good news because unlike as it appears, healing of a negative emotion or belief originated from a legacy or an archetypal burden is much easier and can be done through techniques like IFS or healing shamanic journeys or ceremonies. Healing of psychological burdens that are linked to a personal experience in this lifetime usually needs deeper and a more compassionate inner work. Psychological burdens can also be classified based on their emotional signature and manifestation. From experience, overwhelming majority of our psychological burdens, especially personal burdens, go back to a handful of painful events during our childhood and adolescence years. Some psychological burdens can also be caused by adverse or life-changing events in our adult life. For example, a severe illness, loss of a loved one, a divorce, an accident, and so on. Here is the way I classify psychological burdens based on their emotional signature and manifestation. Depressing emotions. Examples are feeling sad, abandoned, hopeless, misunderstood, lonely, fearful, empty, numb, lost, and so on. Impulsive emotions. Examples are feeling anger, resentment, frustration, inner conflict, addictive urges, and so on. Self-critical emotions or beliefs. Examples are feeling shame, guilt, regret, self-blame, self-doubt, and so on. And self-loathing emotions or beliefs. Examples are feeling insignificant, unwanted, unattractive, lazy, not special, dumb, etc. These burdens block our ability to operate in an ideal state of mind, as described earlier. But once they are healed and transformed, the ideal state of mind emerges organically. This is because, as children, we are naturally inclined to feel alive and inspired, and to be excited, playful, and adventurous in life. So once our psychological burdens are healed and lifted, we naturally return to our true nature as an alive and soulful being. When you do psychological inner work, you become curious about each of these burdens, and one by one, notice, heal, and transform them. For example, if you want to set free from the burden of guilt, you need to journal and list all instances in your life that made you feel guilty. Then you need to focus on them one at a time, understand the circumstances they came about, and help the younger version of you carrying that guilt to let go of it. These burdens are there because something happened to you when you were younger and less experienced. Through psychological inner work, you are able to understand these burdens, find how they came about, and help your younger self release and transform them. Your younger self cannot do this without your support, and that is what psychological inner work is all about. Can you imagine how positive your view of yourself and your life can become once you are liberated from all fear, sadness, shame, guilt, regret, doubt, and so on? It would be the most liberating and life-changing experience, and it's worth all the efforts you may need to put in to get there. If you notice any doubt about you ever being able to get there, ask your doubt to give you space and trust you, because you can get there if you genuinely commit to do your own inner work. What skills are needed to do psychological inner work? The archetype of healing. So far, we covered what psychological inner work is and why it is essential to our emotional well-being. We also covered different types and classifications of psychological burdens. With this background, now it is a good time to focus more on practical aspects of psychological inner work and how one can actually do that. As mentioned, psychological inner work is a deep and technical work, so there are some skills that are required and must be developed and mastered. Because psychological inner work is primarily focused on healing, it is important to understand the process of healing and the conditions required for healing to happen. Healing is an archetypal process, which means it requires conditions that must be satisfied for it to happen. It is best to explain the archetype of healing by using a therapy or a healing session as an example. If you have ever experienced getting help from a therapist, a healer, or a compassionate friend to heal something in you, you can relate to the process described here. Let's imagine a healing relationship. For example, a relationship between a healer, like a therapist, and a client who needs healing. For healing to happen in such relationship, the following conditions must be satisfied. The healer must be calmed, centered, non-judgmental, and compassionate. The client must feel these in the healer. The healer must be able to cultivate a trusting relationship with the client by being a compassionate listener, fully tuned in to the client's story. This is usually referred to as therapeutic relationship, a trusting relationship between the healer and the client. When the client tells their story, usually the circumstances which caused the burden, the client must feel listened to, acknowledged, validated, and understood by the healer. After their story is told, the healer needs to become a hope merchant and help the client imagine how it would be like to be healed. The healer must ask what the client needs in order to let go of the burden. What does need to happen for the client's burdened part to feel redeemed? The healer must facilitate what the burdened part of client needs to let go of the burden. This may require the client to internally redo or correct the experience that caused the burden, or involve a ceremonial purging or release of the burden into the elements. Letting go of the burden is the most important part of healing. Once client's burden part lets go of the burden, the healer must invite the part to embody its true nature and invite positive or life-affirming qualities. This transforms the emotional state of the client. The archetype of healing described through this process involved two parties. However, this process can also happen internally within you. It is possible to do your own healing work, but for that, you need to open your heart and awaken the compassionate healer within you. You need to become a wounded healer, take ownership over your healing process, and develop the ability to awaken the healer already within you. So fundamentally, what's happening in a therapeutic healing session between two parties could also happen internally within you. When doing your own healing inner work, the archetype of healing can manifest internally in 5 steps. Step 1. Identifying what burden to focus on. Choosing a part of you that carries a burden. Step 2. Externalizing the burden. Imagining or somatically sensing the burdened part of you externally. Step 3. Embodying the center. Opening your compassionate heart and awakening your inner healer. Step 4. Establishing therapeutic relationship. Cultivating a compassionate connection between your center and the part of you carrying the burden. Step 5. Facilitating healing and transformation. Being a hope merchant and inviting the burdened part to heal. Step 3, which is opening your compassionate heart, is the most important and may need more efforts to master. But once that is in place, doing the other steps simply needs time and practice. Please note that there is much to say about each of these steps, and covering them in great details is out of scope of this presentation. However, for sake of clarity, I provide here a brief description of what each of these steps entails. I also use a hypothetical example to show how they come together during psychological inner work. The psychological burden I use here as an example is a part of me that is guarded and oversensitive to people around me and cares about what they think of me. Let's go over these steps. Psychological inner work, step 1. Identifying what burden to focus on. Burden is a painful emotion or belief that a part of your personality carries. This burden is often formed when you were much younger and usually reminds you of a younger version of you experiencing it. When you do psychological inner work, you should try to only focus on one burden at a time. If there are multiple burdens your mind is suffering from, 1 or 2 often take more space than others. Again, the burden I focus in my example here is a part of me that is guarded and oversensitive to people around me. This burden blocks my ability to be myself and connect authentically with others. Psychological inner work, step 2. Externalizing the burden. Externalizing the burden is about creating separation between yourself and the burdened part of you so you can imagine or sense it externally. If you fully embodied the burden, you cannot cultivate a compassionate connection to it because you and the burden are one. Let me give an example to clarify what I mean. If you notice some pain in your hand, you naturally raise your hand and try to focus your caring attention to where the pain is. You become the higher observer of the pain and establish a compassionate connection with it. Similarly, if a part of you has emotional pain, you want to create separation between yourself and that pain, because that is the only way you can establish a compassionate connection with it. That said, once you know what burden you wish to focus on, you need to externalize and locate it as an image, a memory, a sensation in your body, or as a younger version of you carrying that burden. If you sense the age you first started noticing this burden in you, You can use a picture of yourself in that age, or imagine a younger version of yourself carrying that burden. This allows you to notice the burden outside of yourself, even though it is technically your burden. In my example, I may notice the burdened part of me that is guarded and oversensitive around people, showing up as my anxious inner child in a schoolyard. Psychological Inner Work, Step 3. Embodying the center. It is known from depth psychology that our psyche has a powerful psycho-spiritual center. This center is different from our personality and embodies most positive, humanistic, and spiritual qualities. Accessing this center manifests as your open heart, as your true self, as your soul, or as you becoming a compassionate inner observer of yourself, an aware I. In IFS model, the center is called self with a capital S. In shamanic healing practices, the center is your spiritual heart. You can experience your center when you meditate, when you open your heart, or when you extend love and compassion toward others or animals. When you embody your center, you feel centered, calm, caring, curious, and compassionate. The simplest way to embody your center is to create space for your heart to be open. This can be done by clearing your mind from all mundane emotions and beliefs. You can do that by internally asking all your emotions and thoughts to separate from you to give you space, so your heart can be more open. Most effective meditation practices are those which do that very effectively. Practices that open your heart and awaken your soul can also help you access your center. Some of my previous presentations can provide some tips on this. However, if you're highly depressed or burdened, you may need some help from a healing practitioner, at least at the beginning, until you develop skills to access your center on your own. In a psychotherapy or healing session, the psychologist or healing practitioner is acting as the center, helping the client heal and transform. In my example, before connecting to my burdened inner child, I take a deep breath, put my hand on my heart, and ask all my emotions and thoughts to give me space. Once my heart is open, I become the compassionate observer of my inner child from a distance, without any judgment or pity. Psychological Inner Work, Step 4. Establishing therapeutic relationship. Once you're centered and your heart is open, you become the compassionate observer of yourself, more specifically, the part of you that carries the burden. Remember that your burdened parts usually feel alone, isolated, and fully preoccupied with the painful emotion or belief they carry. So they may not realize that you're compassionately observing them in your mind, and may even feel surprised noticing your compassionate presence. So you often need to make your burdened part aware of you. To do that, you can simply extend your compassion to your burdened part internally, letting it know who you are and how older and wiser you have become now, and that you're here to be with it and listen to its story. This establishes a therapeutic relationship, which is a compassionate and trusting relationship between you as a compassionate observer and the burdened part of you who needs that compassion. In my example, I approach my inner child in the schoolyard in my imagination and make him notice me. I also let him know that I notice the burden he carries and am here to be with him. I let him know I am his future self and I am now wiser and more experienced. This creates a trusting inner relationship between me as a compassionate observer and my guarded and oversensitive inner child, who now feels seen and valued by me. Psychological Inner Work, Step 5. Facilitating healing and transformation. Once you establish a trusting and compassionate therapeutic relationship with the burdened part of you, you should ask it to share its story. The process starts with you listening to your burdened part internally, asking it to tell you intuitively why it holds that burden. What happened? What painful or difficult experience caused the burden to be created? Remember that very often, your burdened parts are younger versions of you who did not have anybody to talk to in the past. So the very act of you compassionately listening and acknowledging them internally is by itself redeeming and healing to them. Once the story is told by your burdened part, let it know you get it and you're sorry that this had to happen. But also become a merchant of hope. For example, let your part know that you're not going anywhere and you can help it release its burden to reclaim its true nature. Let it know it can choose to leave that painful memory and come to the present to be with you from now on. This usually invites hope and encourages your burdened part to be open to let go of its burden. However, it is possible that the burdened part of you is also protecting or is related to another more vulnerable part of you who is also burdened. So it may need you to also help the other vulnerable part to release its burden so they can both be free from burdens. Once your part is ready to unburden, ask how it wants to do that. It can release the burden to the elements, for example, release it to the wind or water, or give it to the fire or the earth. If the burdened part wants to redo or correct a difficult experience, but this time in a positive way, facilitate what it needs. Once the burdens are released, invite your now healed part or parts to embody their true and soulful nature in that age, and give them a choice to go to a nice place or come to be with you in the present. You can always check with them from time to time to make sure they are well. This is the last step of the archetype of healing and concludes the healing and transformation of the burdened part. In my example, my sensitivity to what people think of me could have been caused when I was in elementary school and my peers bullied and conspired against me. So it is not me as an adult who is overly sensitive to people around me, but my burdened inner child who was hurt by his peers and was stuck in that schoolyard. Once my inner child feels heard and compassionately understood by me, he will open up to let go of the sensitivity he embodied back then. But he may also want me to help a more vulnerable and sad part of me that was hurt back then. I can also invite my sad and vulnerable part to release his sadness and come to be with me in the present. Both my sensitive and sad parts can now choose to transform and embody their true nature in that age, which is soulful and playful. This releases all their burdens and transforms them to embody the life-affirming qualities again. In closing, remember that having inner peace and harmony is the foundation of your life. So if you don't sense them in you, you need to find what negative emotion or belief is blocking you from feeling inner peace and harmony. You can heal and transform these negative emotions and beliefs, but to do that, you need to take ownership over your healing journey and do some psychological inner work. When done with full intention and dedication, psychological inner work leads to restoration of inner peace and harmony and the birth of your authentic self and individuality. If you have found this presentation insightful, please like and share it with your like-minded friends. Please subscribe to my channel and share your thoughts and comments. For more information about myself and my life mentoring practice, please find my bio link in the description below. Blessings.